Welcome to the Daily Globe. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon for more breaking updates. In the heart of Europe, a new and unexpected rift is emerging, one that could reshape the continent's political landscape for years to come. Hungary, a nation with a rich and complex history, now finds itself at the center of a growing storm that threatens to divide not just countries, but the very ideals that have held Europe together since the end of the Cold War. A political earthquake is gathering force, sending tremors through the corridors of power in Brussels and beyond. The European Union, long seen as a symbol of unity and cooperation, is now facing one of its most serious internal challenges in decades. Hungary, under the leadership of Prime Minister Viktor Orbán, is openly defying the European Union's mainstream consensus. Orbán's government has repeatedly clashed with EU institutions over issues ranging from migration and media freedom to judicial independence and the rule of law. This is more than a political spat, it's a direct challenge to Western unity and the post-Cold War order. The divisions are not just about policy, but about the very direction in which Europe is heading, toward deeper integration or renewed nationalism. Budapest's pivot toward the BRICS nations and China has sent shockwaves across the continent, raising urgent questions about the future of European alliances. Hungary's growing ties with Beijing and Moscow are seen by many as a deliberate move to assert its independence from Brussels and to seek new partners in a rapidly changing world. Orbán frames the choice as Brussels versus sovereignty, a message that resonates deeply with those disillusioned by globalization and skeptical of outside influence. For many Hungarians, the promise of national self-determination is more appealing than ever, even if it means risking confrontation with the EU. By courting Russia and China, Hungary is testing the limits of its EU and NATO membership, creating a new geopolitical fault line that could have far-reaching consequences. The country's actions are forcing its Western allies to reconsider what it means to be part of the European family. The implications reach far beyond Hungary's borders, touching on the war in Ukraine, the future of transatlantic relations, and the delicate balance of power in a world where old alliances are being tested and new ones are forming. The choices made in Budapest could influence the fate of Europe itself. The Budapest Gambit has begun, and the world is watching Hungary's next move with a mix of anxiety and anticipation. As the stakes grow higher, the outcome of this new fault line in Europe remains uncertain, but its impact will be felt far and wide. Hungary's standoff with Brussels is the result of over a decade of escalating friction. Since 2010, Orbán's government has clashed with the EU over judicial independence, media freedom, and minority rights. Billions in EU funds have been withheld, with Brussels demanding reforms. Orbán calls it political blackmail. The war in Ukraine has deepened the rift as Hungary blocks sanctions and aid, isolating itself within the bloc. Years of conflict have fostered deep mistrust, pushing Hungary to seek new alliances in the east. The fractured relationship has, in effect, pushed Hungary to look elsewhere. Orbán is looking east, aligning Hungary with the BRICS bloc and especially China. While Hungary hasn't formally joined BRICS, Orbán's rhetoric and policies make his intentions clear. Hungary has deepened economic ties with China, attracting major investments in electric vehicles and infrastructure. Projects like the Budapest-Belgrade Railway, funded by Chinese loans, signal a strategic shift. Orbán argues the West's era is ending, and Hungary must adapt to survive. Yet Hungary's economy remains tied to the EU, making this pivot a risky balancing act. The Eastern Promise is central to Orbán's foreign policy, but it clashes with Hungary's Western commitments. This balancing act is becoming harder as global lines harden. In a move that has stunned the international community, Hungary has announced its boldest diplomatic initiative yet, agreeing to host a high-stakes summit between Russian President Vladimir Putin and former US President Donald Trump. This unprecedented event is set to take place in the heart of Budapest, signaling Hungary's willingness to defy Western expectations and carve out its own path on the global stage. The world is watching closely as Prime Minister Viktor Orbán positions his country at the center of a geopolitical storm. By extending an invitation to Putin, Budapest is not just hosting a controversial leader, it is openly challenging the authority of the International Criminal Court, which has issued an arrest warrant for the Russian president. This move also flies in the face of established EU legal norms, raising serious questions about Hungary's commitment to the rule of law and its obligations as a member of the European Union. The decision has provoked outrage and sharp condemnation from Hungary's EU and NATO allies. Poland, in particular, has issued a stark warning, threatening to intercept any aircraft carrying Putin if it attempts to cross EU airspace. The diplomatic fallout has been swift, with European leaders expressing alarm over Hungary's willingness to break ranks and undermine collective security. In response to mounting pressure, reports have emerged that Hungary is seriously considering withdrawing from the International Criminal Court altogether, a move that would make it the first EU state to do so. Such a step would have far-reaching consequences, potentially weakening the international justice system and setting a dangerous precedent for other countries. For Prime Minister Orbán, however, the summit represents a unique opportunity. He sees it as a chance to elevate Hungary's status as a global power broker, capable of bringing together rival leaders and shaping the future of international diplomacy. Orbán's ambitions are clear. He wants Hungary to be seen as a nation that can punch above its weight on the world stage. But the risks of this gamble are immense. By defying the West and embracing Putin, Hungary risks deepening its isolation within Europe and undermining the international community's efforts to hold the Russian leader accountable for alleged war crimes. The move could have lasting repercussions for Hungary's relationships with its closest allies. Ukraine and other EU member states have reacted with outrage, viewing Hungary's actions as a profound betrayal. Many now question whether Hungary can still be considered a neutral actor, or if it has chosen to side with authoritarian powers at the expense of European unity and shared values. As Orbán bets on a shifting world order, the stakes for Hungary have never been higher. The country stands at a crossroads. Its future as a respected member of the international community hangs in the balance, and the outcome of this bold gamble remains uncertain. Just as Hungary pivots east, it surprises Europe by joining the EU's Safe Defense Initiative. Despite opposing EU support for Ukraine, Hungary now seeks loans to boost its own defense industry. The move is pragmatic, favorable terms and no co-financing required, but raises questions about Hungary's true intentions. Orbán's government appears to pick and choose EU benefits while rejecting its obligations. Hungary's economy and security are still deeply tied to Europe, making a clean break impossible. The EU must now decide how long it will tolerate this selective approach. Orbán's confrontational foreign policy is rooted in his Hungarian model, defending sovereignty, promoting conservative values, and favoring state intervention. He contrasts this with the Brussels model, which he claims threatens Hungary's identity and stability. Orbán frames every challenge as an attack from Brussels, reinforcing his image as Hungary's defender. His social policies, tax breaks for families, support for mothers, and special taxes on foreign industries are popular and fuel his nationalist narrative. The model maintains democratic structures but centralizes power and curtails checks and balances. This doctrine underpins Hungary's defiance on the world stage, from hosting Putin to courting China. Understanding the Orbán doctrine is key to understanding Hungary's current path. Dr. Elena Kovács of the European Policy Center describes Hungary's current approach as a classic high-risk, high-reward gamble. She notes that Prime Minister Viktor Orbán is not simply reacting to events, but actively shaping Hungary's future with bold, sometimes controversial moves. This strategy, she says, is about more than just short-term gains. It's about redefining Hungary's place in the world, even if that means walking a political tightrope. Orbán's vision is to transform Hungary into a vital gateway between East and West, leveraging its unique geographic and political position. By courting investment from both Asian and European partners, he hopes to boost Hungary's economy and raise his own profile on the international stage. This balancing act is designed to attract new opportunities, but it also exposes Hungary to significant volatility and uncertainty. The risks, however, are enormous. Hungary's economy is deeply intertwined with the European Union, relying on EU funds, trade, and investment. By antagonizing key partners in Brussels, Orbán risks not only the freezing of crucial financial support, but also the possibility of Hungary's role in the EU being called into question. Such tensions could have far-reaching consequences for businesses, workers, and families across the country. On the global stage, Hungary finds itself squeezed between powerful rivals and allies: Russia, China, the EU, and the United States. Each of these superpowers has its own interests, and Hungary's attempts to play them off one another could backfire, leaving the country vulnerable to diplomatic and economic pressure from all sides. Security is another major concern. Hungary's safety is guaranteed by NATO, yet Orbán's policies sometimes undermine the alliance's unity. At the same time, Hungary's prosperity depends on the EU, whose democratic values and rules Orbán often challenges. This creates a paradox. Hungary relies on the very institutions it is pushing against. If Orbán's bet on a weakened or divided West does not pay off, Hungary could find itself increasingly isolated, cut off from vital markets, investment, and political support. Economic stagnation and political marginalization would threaten not just the government, but the livelihoods of ordinary Hungarians. At home, the stakes are just as high. Many Hungarians cherish the freedoms and opportunities that come with EU membership, such as the ability to travel, work, and study across Europe. If isolation leads to economic hardship or loss of rights, public opinion could shift rapidly, sparking protests and political unrest. Ultimately, the survival of the so-called Hungarian model depends on maintaining economic stability and public trust. Orbán is wagering not only his country's future, but also his own political legacy, on a strategy that could either secure Hungary's place as a regional power, or leave it isolated and vulnerable in a rapidly changing world. Hungary's actions are shaking the foundations of EU unity. Its vetoes on sanctions and aid for Ukraine expose the EU's structural weaknesses and force other members to manage an internal dissenter. Hungary's selective adherence to EU rules undermines solidarity and could embolden other populist movements. Orbán's illiberal democracy challenges the EU's identity and weakens its credibility abroad. The Putin-Trump summit and possible ICC withdrawal highlight a growing values gap within the Union. The EU faces a critical choice: continue dialogue and leverage, or take drastic measures that could lead to a political schism. How the EU responds will define its future cohesion and power. On October 22, 2025, the EU stands at a crossroads, with Hungary's actions exposing deep ideological rifts. Orbán bets on a multipolar world, steering Hungary away from Western unity despite the risks. Hungary's double game, seeking EU funds while defying its rules, is becoming unsustainable. The planned Putin-Trump summit is a direct challenge to EU values and legal norms. The choices made now will shape Europe's future. Can the EU enforce its rules, or will it fracture under nationalist pressure? What happens in Budapest will echo across Europe and the world. The future of a continent may well depend on the answers.